It's time for another edition of Lewis at Large, 60 minutes of smart talk radio featuring guests from all walks of life in conversation with your host, Warner Lewis. So sit back and lend us your ears for the next hour. Now here with today's first guest is the host of Lewis at Large, Warner Lewis.
Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck. And of course, as always, that means some smart talk radio is in your future. And this segment, we're going to finally tackle this one head on. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the American political scene. We have, we haven't avoided it. We just haven't talked much about it on this show, and none better than David S. Reynolds. He is a distinguished professor at the City University of New York Graduate Center. He's also the author and editor of several books, including most recently Lincoln's Selected Writings. He is opinionated, undoubtedly, about what's going on here, particularly if viewed from the vantage point of someone like President Abraham Lincoln, but we'll find out more. Dr. Reynolds, how are you, my friend?
Just fine, thank you. Good to be here.
Well, as we are taping this show, of course, things change on the American political landscape from day to day, but we just recently, Donald Trump strengthened his hold on the Republican nomination by winning the primary in Michigan. Bernie Sanders threw a little bit of a kink or wrench into the mix by winning Michigan himself. As things stand now, who are going to be the nominees, do you think?
Probably in the end, I think it'll be Trump and Clinton. I think what happened is that Sanders has done very, very well, much better than he expected or anybody expected. But I think looking down the line, unless the momentum not only of Michigan but perhaps of other Midwestern states in which Sanders is supposed to show some strength, unless that kind of momentum gathers, I think the most likely scenario is Clinton versus Trump. I will say, though, that there's an attraction to Sanders that's in a way similar to an attraction to Trump, and that is, in essence, both are perceived as kind of outside the usual system. Sanders being outside the money system and Trump being outside the party system. And I think this is really the result of the gridlock in Congress, in Washington, the inability of people to sort of compromise and meet in the middle. And so the average voter just becomes very, very frustrated. And so that even though actually we've had a very, very long record now of job growth in terms of numbers, the wages haven't quite kept up. But in terms of the month-to-month numbers of job successive months of job growth, in spite of that, people feel, very, very frustrated by the gumming up in Congress and the polarization that has been created by the regular party establishment. So I think people are looking to people like Sanders and to Trump, these kind of outsiders. And not that Sanders will probably make it all the way, but seems like Trump will probably get the Republican nomination.
There is a lot of anger out there with the electorate. There's a lot of feeling disconnected. What do you attribute this current political climate as it relates specifically to the campaign, the rhetoric that's used, the adversarial positions, the digging in of heels? There's no question. This one, they're playing hardball as much as in any recent election. Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think it does result from the frustration that originally was created by Citizens United. And what Citizens United did is that it really freed up campaign contributions to such a degree that you had special interests who gathered together as super PACs. They gathered wealthy people together. And essentially they funded many campaigns on the part of people that were therefore obliged to institute because in a way these people were, I don't want to use the word bought, but in a way they were facilitated by these special interest groups through political advertising and political promotion of all kinds and political organizations and groups. So it seems to me that when Moneyball came into the landscape in such a big way, it created a political situation where people in Congress, in politics, were really beholden to their moneyed interests, and that this created a incredible stasis and gumming up of the political system. And so when the average person looks at this and kind of like nothing can happen, maybe Obama might present something, but then Congress even refuses to consider it, as is happening with the Supreme Court situation. And almost every issue, it almost happened with Planned Parenthood, where there was a threat to actually shut down the government over Planned Parenthood. But people assume these extreme ideological positions, and that comes close to actually closing the government, or at least retarding the government process. And so people look to someone like Trump almost as kind of a superhero, someone who can kind of come in and kind of bash everything apart, break it apart, and break. Well, he wants to build a wall, but he ostensibly he wants to create break down other walls, break down hopefully the walls between the parties. And he always talks about the way he attracts Democrats and Republicans as well. So people kind of look to him with a certain hopefulness, and the fact that he's independently funded, at least to this extent. They say later on he's going to accept contributions, but to this, he's funding himself. He seems to be outside of that manipulation, and people admire that, and that's really what they admire in Bernie as well.
Is there an election in the past, Professor Reynolds, that you can think of, that history tells us the conditions were similar and the rhetoric was similar?
Yeah, well, there are actually two elections. There have been a number of elections, but the two that stand out to me are the 1856 and 1860. What happened in 1856 is, for the first time, you had the Republican Party. Why? Because all the way up to that, you had the Whig Party versus the Democrats, but then the Whig Party literally broke apart. In a way, we look at the Republican Party today, and sometimes it almost seems like it's going to unravel. I don't think it will unravel, but there are a lot of disappointed establishment Republicans who really don't like Donald Trump. So there's this threat of the unraveling and breaking apart of the parties, and that's actually what created the Republican Party originally, was that the Whig Party broke up, and so all you had was the Democratic Party, and it was divided. There was a divisive social issue, slavery, human slavery, with the Democrats supporting slavery, and then the new party, the Republicans, opposing slavery. And in 1860, the next election, the Republicans were led by Abraham Lincoln, and the Democrats actually split apart themselves. They got all shattered up themselves, because what happened is that Stephen Douglas, who was the Democrat, now the Democrats back there were the conservatives and the Republicans were the liberals, so it's different than today. So Stephen Douglas, who was a Democrat, was considered a secret liberal. He was pretending to be conservative, and his fellow Democrats thought that he was a little bit like the Republicans who look at Trump today. They looked at Douglas and say, underneath he's actually liberal. So they had a convention, and they literally broke apart into three. So there were the Douglas Democrats, then there were the Southern Democrats who totally supported slavery. They were totally in support of slavery, and they were under John Breckinridge. And then there were the Union Party, a more moderate kind of party that above all wanted to maintain the Union. Actually, the Union divided shortly thereafter, because what happened was that Abraham Lincoln, as a Republican, even though he lost the popular vote to his combined three opponents, if you combine them together, he lost it by 1 million votes, but he won the electoral college, because none of the other single parties, the the three other single parties won in the Electoral College, so he actually won the presidency. And at that point, the nation literally divided in half because 11 southern states left the American Union. They became the Confederate States, and that began the Civil War, the American Civil War.
Again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. In this segment, talking American political scenes, American campaigns as of today, talking with David S. Reynolds. He is a distinguished professor at the City University of New York Graduate Center. He's also the author and editor of several books, including most recently Lincoln's Selected Writings. All right, we got to ask you, what would Abe Lincoln think today as he looked around the landscape here? What in the world would he be thinking?
Yeah, well, the thing about Abe Lincoln was that he was very humble and self-effacing. He always joked about how ugly he was. He wasn't really that ugly, but anyway, he kind of joked about that. He had a great sense of humor. He didn't really brag about himself. In fact, he often talked about his lowly origins. He actually he'd been a lawyer for 25 years and made pretty good money. Back then, pretty good money was $2,000 a year. That was considered very, very good money. But the thing is also is that he was extremely sort of moderate. It's not that he he was kind of a radical underneath because he really hated slavery, and if you hated slavery back then, you were considered a radical because slavery was actually at that time endorsed by the Constitution. So he hated it, but he didn't openly advance it because to do so would be really to alienate a lot of people, not just in the South, but even in the North. The North had become very accustomed. A lot of people in the North didn't like slavery, but they've been kind of accustomed to it, so to speak, and there were a lot of business deals with the South and financial connections with the South and all of that. So he couldn't really come out and say it, so he took the role of pressing toward human justice and pressing toward the freedom of the slaves, but at the same time being very tactful about it. He wasn't a bully. He would try to talk with his opponents, and there were a lot of newspaper editors who were against him, but he would invite them to the White House. He would joke with them. He would relax with them and talk with them. And he had a way of human communication that really thawed a lot of frozenness back then. And he was able to carry on the war and lead the nation to victory in the war. He was also very sharp as a military leader, even though he had very little military experience previously, because in the end he gave free rein really to Ulysses S. Grant and William Tecumseh Sherman, his two great generals. And he was smart enough to recognize how good they were, and he said, you guys just go ahead and you do what you have to do to win this war. And so they won the war, and but it was him in the background kind of regulating everything that really helped.
You've done a lot of research on Lincoln. I'm curious as to your take and what your opinion was of the Daniel Day-Lewis portrayal of Lincoln and the movie in general.
Well, I really liked it. I think Daniel Day-Lewis did a wonderful job of portraying Lincoln. Are there moments in the movie that are unfactual? Absolutely. It is a movie. It is a movie. The way the whole movie opens with the two soldiers who recite the Gettysburg Address to Lincoln, and that never happened. And then at the end, when Thaddeus Stevens goes and goes to bed with his African American mistress, there was a rumor that he lived with an African American woman, but it was just a rumor. So we don't really know for sure. But what I liked about the movie is that not only the performances, particularly by Daniel Day-Lewis, but I really liked the way Spielberg captured the atmosphere and also the spirit of Abraham Lincoln. It seems to me, and to me, that's the best thing a historical movie can do, is to capture the spirit of both the time, the place, and the person. And I don't care if there are little a few lies here and there or a few uses of the imagination, to me that's perfectly fine. But as long as it remains true to the spirit, that's very, very important to me.
Well, getting back, Professor Reynolds, to today's political scene, how has the proliferation and incredible widespread use of and reaction to social media, how has it changed the political landscape, particularly as it relates to running for office?
Well, the way it's changed is it's changed the political landscape, I think, in two main ways. From the perspective of the candidates, it gives them an instant mouthpiece to the American people. And if these candidates accumulate enough followers, like Trump has, I don't know how many followers, but he has a lot of, and he can Twitter out whatever he wants, and then the other candidates can do the same. And through Facebook and everything, there are a lot of ways now of communicating directly to the people. And back in Lincoln's time, the candidates actually didn't campaign. It was considered improper to campaign for yourself. So what happened is that there were rallies around the nation, like big rallies for Lincoln and big rallies for Douglas by the people, but the candidates were not there. So it was very, very different. And a second way that affects it is from the perspective of the audience and the voter, the viewers of the voters. Because what happens is that they learn instantly nowadays, not only on television but also on social media, what is happening in the campaign instantly. Now, in the old days, back in Lincoln's day, Lincoln and Douglas, when they had their debates, well, Lincoln would speak for an hour and a half. This was out; they didn't have TV or anything like that. This was out in the open air, no microphones, and there might be 5,000 people there. But they stand on a platform. Lincoln would speak for an hour and a half, and then Douglas would speak for an hour and a half. Then Lincoln would speak for an hour and go on for about 4 hours, and then go on to another debate. But the actual debates themselves were not heard very widely until maybe weeks later when, let's say, the Eastern newspapers, the debates had taken place in Illinois, by the way, when the Eastern newspapers finally received copy of them. So there was this time lag between, it wasn't like today where instantaneously we see what's happening in these debates. So back then it was much slower. I don't know which is healthier. I think what was nice about the old days, frankly, was that at least the candidates did speak. I don't know if I want to hear someone speak for an hour and a half and then somebody else speak for an hour and a half, but at least they got to delve into each issue very, very carefully and very detailed. Today we have a soundbite culture in which you have to make an instantaneous impression, sometimes by these memorized lines, but at other times even by insults or quick zingers or quick comebacks like the size of your hands and the size of this and that and the other, and just to make a sensational effect, because otherwise pretty soon that bell is going to ring and you're going to be told to be quiet. So it becomes more like a wrestling match nowadays rather than a very serious discussion of the issues at hand.
Okay, kind of a couple quick ones here as we start to wind down. Hillary Clinton email scandal, going to end up being no big deal or maybe a deal killer for her?
Well, it could be a deal killer because we don't really know what's going to happen. I think that whoever opposes her, and particularly if it's Trump, it looks like it'll be Trump, he vows every day to talk about the email scandal. And she's going to have to really explain herself very clearly and very well and in a very believable fashion to escape someone, particularly like Trump, who really doesn't mind bashing people left and right, and he can kind of get away with it. So it could, and I think it already has hurt Hillary, because her level of trust so far hasn't been as high as some of the other candidates, such as Sanders.
All right, I'm not going to ask you to predict who's going to be in the Final Four, but I am going to ask you to predict here, Dr. Reynolds, as we head out here, who's the next president of the United States?
That's a great question. I kind of, I'm not saying my preference. I'm not necessarily saying my preference.
You're just making a prediction.
I'm just making a prediction, just a prediction. It's totally neutral. My prediction is Donald Trump.
All right, there you have it. You heard it here first. We've been talking to David S. Reynolds. He is a distinguished professor at Trinity University of New York Graduate Center, author of several books, including a new one, Lincoln Selected Writings. Mr. Reynolds, how can people find out more about your work and maybe pick up a copy of some of the literature you've written?
Yeah, well, I've written 15 books. You can go to davidsreynolds.com, davidsreynolds.com.
Well, we appreciate your insights and would love to have you on again someday.
Thank you very, very much.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large. Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck. And of course, that means some smart talk radios in your future. This segment, very, very pleased to have a true gentleman, an American icon even, Dr. Jerry Punch. You have known him and you have seen him and listened to him on ESPN and a variety of sportscasts, including motorsports, college sports. He has been in Lawrence and done several University of Kansas games for the networks over the years. He is a medical doctor by trade, director of emergency room services at a Florida hospital, having served 2 terms as chief of staff there. He's also been honored many, many times, including receiving the United States Air Force Outstanding Performance Award for exemplary service in the auto racing community and NASCAR's 1990 Team Player of the Year Award, et cetera, et cetera. We'll talk about all things men's health and all things sports indeed. Dr. Punch, how are you, my friend?
I am doing great, Warner. It is so nice to chat with you again. And, I remembered all the great visits over the years to Lawrence and look forward to coming back.
Well, I've got a question for you. You've been asked this 1,000 times. We'll ask it 1,001 times. Emergency room doc suddenly is on television doing sports and motorsports. Tell us the trail that got you there.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure that I had any formal journalism training, but I was passionate about sports, and it really has to go back to my parents. My mom and dad said, get your education, and the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want to do. And so I listened to what they said, went to college, went to medical school, did my residency, and I've always had a passion for sports. And so I had some friends who allowed me to do some local radio, which I enjoyed. I got a chance to call some events and do radio and then television, and the NASCAR thing came along, and the NASCAR people said, we're going to start doing television in NASCAR, but we don't want some redneck doing television. So then they said, well, we've got an educated redneck. We got this guy who went to medical school. So that suddenly I'm on television with Keith Jackson doing ABC's Wide World of Sports and ESPN, and just very blessed. I mean, I was very fortunate, a lot of help along the way to get to be a medical doctor so I could try to help people medically and then be a sportscaster so maybe I can give people an idea of what we think is going to happen next.
Well, it seems to me you're a little bit more than a redneck with a degree. You are known for your fairly heady, wide, sweeping commentary. But anyway, pleased to have you here. Here's another thing I would like to ask you. The medical community offers all kinds of opportunities. Why, for you, emergency room care?
Well, I thought about being a surgeon. I thought about doing other things, but I like the thrill. And maybe the thrill isn't a great word, the adrenaline of being able to make a difference very quickly. And in the emergency room, when someone comes in acutely ill, what I do can, in the first few minutes they're there, many times can make a difference between whether they survive or not, or the pain or anguish they go through. And quite honestly, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to be a part of this campaign. The Ask About the Curve campaign is because maybe my words and my advice to men to make a phone call to a urologist if you have a problem, a men's health problem, which is becoming more and more prevalent and men are embarrassed to ask about, called Peyronie's disease, that, hey, Dr. Punch says, if you pick up the phone and make a call or consult a urologist, suddenly you shouldn't have to suffer with this because a urologist can take care of it.
Well, and again, it's an important piece of this segment with you, is talking about men's health in general. Men historically have been reluctant to get a hold of a doctor, have regular checkups. I'm not speaking for everybody, obviously, but give us some history on that, why that is, and again, some maybe either words of advice, encouragement, or about the payoff.
Well, men, you're exactly right. I mean, it's well put, Warner. Women are more prone to go to the doctor if they have a medical problem. Men will think that time will take care of it, or if I ignore it, it'll go away because I'm too busy, I'm too focused. Or some men think, hey, you know what? I'm all powerful and I'm invincible or I'm invisible. That's not the case. And unfortunately, men go to the doctor too late, and sometimes the diagnosis is not good, and a lot can't be done. And this is a disease, men's health condition, Peyronie's disease, where there is a curvature or pain during arousal and intimacy. Now, we're talking about an intimate situation, so what will happen is if you get this pain or curvature, it affects you emotionally. Self-esteem, depression, anxiety can create relationship issues. So here's a guy that's out in the community. He's very successful professionally. I'm talking about guys I know that are coaches and players and race car drivers and just the average patient. 1 in 10 men worldwide have this. But unfortunately, not everyone has the courage because they're embarrassed or they're ashamed to pick up a phone and call a urologist. And so I want you guys to know there is a treatment. You simply pick up the phone, and if you're not sure what you're dealing with, go to the website. It's askaboutthecurve.com. Pull it up on your phone or on your computer. Read about it. There's pictures on there of a Curve ketchup bottle, and it tells you about how this works and the scar tissue. You say, that's what I've got. And are you kidding me? I've been dealing with this for so long, physically and emotionally. And there's also a zip code you can put in there that'll refer you to a urologist locally, or you can have your primary care doctor do that as well. The key is getting a man to not be embarrassed and to go and seek a consult, seek help from a urologist.
Another question, and again, we appreciate the advice, especially on this particular condition. What about just overall in men going just to get physicals, men being aware of their bodies, particularly this gigantic group of aging baby boomers?
Well, I think that's we tag that to this message. I mean, going to a urologist for a condition that can be emotionally devastating, like Peyronie's disease, is just part of the message. The other part is take care of yourself. You will take time to watch a football game or go to watch a basketball game or watch March Madness. Why not take time for yourself? And don't be selfish, because this condition specifically, Peyronie's disease, can affect your entire family, can affect your partner, your wife. And ladies, if you're listening and you realize you understand your husband or your partner has this, then encourage them to go. Say, hey, I heard Dr. Punch talking with Warner, and there's a website called askaboutthecurve.com. Let's go look at that. Let's read about that. And maybe that'll stimulate you also to realize you need to have an annual physical. You need to have, at certain ages, you need to have this procedure done and that procedure done to try to make sure that you ward off other problems and take care of yourself. I tell people this week, Peyton Manning wouldn't have survived 18 years in the NFL if he didn't care about his body and try to do whatever he could to take care of himself, to be able to perform at an elite level. And that's all we're doing, asking guys, hey, guys, do what Peyton Manning did. Take care of yourself. Get that physical. And if you have this often undiagnosed disease called PD, just go to askaboutthecurve.com, read about it, and get help.
Again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. This segment, we're talking men's health. We're also talking a little bit of sports with the guy that does combine both very well, Dr. Jerry Punch. You have seen him and heard him on radio, also seen him on ESPN, a wide variety of motorsports, as well as football, basketball, etc. He's been to the Lawrence area many, many times as well. Dr. Punch, let's, PD specifically, any guesstimates or estimates on the number of American males that are afflicted with this condition?
Well, we know, Warner, that roughly 1 in 10 worldwide. But the reason that number, that sounds like a lot, but we also know there's a lot that are undiagnosed because they're unreported. and more urologists. We're learning from speaking with the urologists who are the specialists in men's health that once a guy comes in to have the evaluation done, they're so thankful. And what we're trying to get not only those guys that have been treated, but the people who haven't been treated to at least step up and be recognized. So 10%. Think about that. If you're in an arena that has 100,000 people watching a football game, as many as 10,000 could be in this realm of PD, and we're talking about ages 30 to 70. The most commonly diagnosed are ages 40 to 70, but we're also seeing men in the 30s who are stepping up now and not being ashamed to say, I've got a problem, I want to get this resolved because I don't want to live my life without being able to have the intimacy I deserve, and I think that's pretty courageous.
And so what you're telling us is this is very treatable.
It's very treatable, absolutely. And guys need to know you're not alone. You'd be surprised how many of your buddies may have this, and which you don't know about. And so it's more prevalent than you realize. It is treatable, and once you call the urologist and get the treatment initiated, you're going to say, "Oh my gosh, how simple was this? Why did I wait?"
What about again? If we expand this out a little bit, what about just overall the sometimes men feel low self-esteem, depressed, isolated. I mean, they're human beings. What about also their mental health as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what happens is that if you don't get this addressed, the physical pain is going to be there. It may get worse, but the emotional distress can be debilitating. And he starts out with a little bit of anxiety, and then the self-esteem issues, depression, and then what happens is many times men will withdraw. They'll become silent. They'll withdraw from any kind of intimate behavior. And that whole segment of your life then goes away, and that affects you mentally. And then it affects your professional life. So don't let something like this that is treatable, and you can simply call the urologist, get in, be evaluated, get the treatment initiated, and get it resolved, and move on. And you're going to and why let it totally erode your life from an emotional standpoint, because you're just ashamed or embarrassed to make a phone call or seek help. That's what we're trying to get it out there. Don't let this destroy your life.
Well, we're going to circle back to this before we end the interview, but we cannot get away. This show is actually airing the morning of Selection Sunday, and who better to talk about the tournament as we jump to March Madness here. First of all, tell us a little bit about what your role is going to be. What are we going to see or hear you?
Well, I've done a lot of college basketball this year, and my schedule actually calls for me to move into IndyCar racing starting this weekend. So
okay.
I will be doing IndyCar races. But since the tournament, March Madness is on CBS, we really don't have that big a role
right.
at ESPN. But having done games all year, this is the time of the year that I'm so excited, and it's also a year when they're really. You almost don't want to be number one, which Kansas fans don't want to hear, but
right.
you almost don't want to be number one because there's a target on your back.
Yep.
The number one teams have been upset so much, and there may not be a clear favorite in March Madness. Duke is down, Kentucky. I think that the best team consistently all year long have been the Kansas Jayhawks, and my gosh, I mean, the job Bill Self has done there, how do you not consider them the favorite to win it all?
What about what is it about this tournament? If it's possible, it gets more and more popular every single year. Whether it's the brackets that people are doing in their offices, the television viewing, the radio listening, the entire captivation of the entire country. It's really amazing.
I think, Warner, it's the unknowns. I think the fact that everyone loves a Cinderella story. Everyone loves that. To see if the glass slipper is going to fit this team or that team. Is it going to be a Virginia Commonwealth or George Mason or Florida Gulf Coast? Who's going to be the Cinderella story, the little guy, the David that beats a Goliath? It doesn't happen in college football very often. It's hard to beat, an Oklahoma or an Alabama or a Clemson or some of these teams like that if you're a small school, but it happens in basketball. And so everyone loves to pull for the underdog and watch them progress through the tournament. You may have your favorite. Your favorite may be Duke or Kansas or Oklahoma, but you always love seeing the little guy get a chance to win, and you find yourself maybe quietly in the corner pulling for someone to pull off the upset. And it's special because, and no one knows, and you're quietly competing with your buddies with your brackets as well, So it's really a great time of the year. So many games happening at once across the country, and so you get a chance to follow everything that's happening. So it's one of my favorite times of the year.
I'd like to add, you've been doing this for a while, broadcasting for a while. I'm curious with the total proliferation of social media and all the sports information and material that's out there and the opinions. How has your role as a broadcaster and analyst changed over the years?
Well, I think we it's important for us. You've always wanted to be accurate. You've always wanted to be concise. And I think now being able to go on Twitter and tweet when I'm at a practice or when I'm visiting with a coach or something to let people know where I am or what we're doing, or I see a colleague that's doing an event or we're doing a special feature on someone that's overcoming a medical illness. And, I want people to know about that. So Twitter, the social media aspects of being able to do that, I think can alert people to what we're trying to accomplish. Hey, I'm going to be doing this game this weekend, and by the way, early in the game, we're going to talk to this young man who has overcome the odds time and again to be able to play football. And so I think that's a whole new aspect of what we're able to do as a broadcaster.
Okay, as we start to wind down here just a little bit, can't get out of here without asking you, who's your Final Four?
Boy, tough this year. I've told people all day long that I think the champion this year will come out of the Big 12. I think the Big 12 conference is so strong and so stout. With that said, I think Virginia is a very complete basketball team, well coached, a lot of depth, play great defense, emotionally very stable. I don't think Duke has got it. I don't think Kentucky's got it. I've seen them both play. I think North Carolina could be strong, and you can't overlook maybe a team out of the Big Ten. Michigan State, because of Tom Izzo, may have a shot. So maybe a Michigan State, North Carolina, Kansas, and let's throw in a Cinderella. Who's your Cinderella? Could it be a Gonzaga? Are they a Cinderella? What about Northern Iowa? Someone like that that's played so well. So hey, you just never know. But it's a great time of the year. I think Kansas will be there, and North Carolina, and maybe Michigan State, and then one wild card.
All right, I asked you this about broadcasting, and let's now put your doctor hat back on. You've been in the medical or in the emergency room for a long time. Tell us about how that role has changed and some big, huge, exciting. What's the headline over the last 20 years coming out of the emergency room?
I think that our ability to treat quickly at the scene with our communication skills and to get treatment initiated at the scene of an accident or injury, and to be able to do things so quickly, the ability to get lab work and be able to get scans done, and because you don't want to waste time. Wasted time can create more complications in the emergency room, and that's why I wanted to be a part of this. I didn't want people to waste time anymore. I wanted to help spread the word that people need to get the help now. I mean, don't wait, because waiting in healthcare, is not a good thing. I don't mind waiting in line for a great cup of coffee. But you wait in healthcare, and you're going to end up paying the price at the other end. So, hey, with this situation, we talk about ask about the curve. Pick up the phone, find a urologist, and get help if you have this problem. Okay,
real quickly, last question here, and that is this. We've been talking about PD and your concerns about that and your encouragement to men. Tell us, again, a website or a resource you would suggest that people, if they wanted to, right after this interview's over and check it out, where could they go?
Guys, listen, don't be embarrassed. Go to askaboutthecurve.com. Askaboutthecurve.com is the website. It'll show you pictures. It'll describe, and you'll do that in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You can read what it says. You'll say, oh, my gosh, this is exactly what I've got, or I've got a friend that has this. And and if you say, well, this is what you got, this is what happens, yeah, I've got that. Okay, this is why it happens, a scar tissue. Okay, how do I get a urologist? You put in your zip code. It'll basically help find you a urologist in your area. You can make a phone call, and in a couple of minutes, you found about the illness. You've gotten your treatment initiated because you have an appointment with a urologist. Just that simple.
Well, we appreciate it. Again, Dr. Jerry Punch, a longtime emergency room doc, numerous broadcasting and medical awards. You see him and hear him on ESPN. He's a big college basketball fan and football fan, as well as the race car circuit. Do appreciate it very much, and would love to have you on again.
Warner, I always love being on with you, Warner. Thanks for having me. I look forward to the next time.
You bet. We'll be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large. Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck, and of course that means some smart talk radio is in your future, and this segment, no exception. Going to be a fun one. We're going to be talking to Nathan Lynch. Who's Nathan Lynch? Well, he is the master of ceremonies at a redesigned, updated, tricked out, exciting, all-new Dixie Stampede in Branson. Dolly Parton, incredible restaurant and dinner show there. The world's most fun place to eat. It should be a fun conversation. Nathan, how are you, my friend?
Doing good. Thanks for having us on the show.
Well, I have a question for you. How do you become a master of ceremonies at the Dixie Stampede? What career path led Nathan Lynch to there?
Well, I knew back in 2004 I wanted to pursue acting as a career, and so we moved to Branson in 2008 and worked here with some of the theaters, and thankfully a spot opened up here at the Dixie Stampede, and I auditioned, and been here for almost 5 seasons now.
So tell us a little bit. Again, we're in Lawrence, Kansas, which is not terribly far from you, fairly short drive. And I'm just curious as to, tell us a little bit about the Stampede. What has been updated? I know a lot of changes have gone there, but explain to our listeners that have not been there. Tell us just overall, tell us about the Stampede when they go there. Tell us what it's about.
Yeah, well, starting in January 2nd of this year, immediately following our Christmas show, we had a Southern Plantation. That was our theme here in the arena. We've had that here for 21 years, and we decided last year that we were going to transform our arena into the Ozark Mountain Country. And so we took out our Southern Mansion, and we put up an Ozark Mountain rock against the wall, and we have a cave and a waterfall, and then directly above that we have a 150-foot LED wall. It has 12.5 million lights. In addition to that, we've also added state-of-the-art light and sound. Now, the sound is pretty awesome. We've added over 100 speakers, and 8 of those speakers are 18-inch subwoofers. So you're not only going to see the show, but you're going to feel the show as well.
And so you've seen a lot of changes, obviously, since you've been there. Is there one particular change that stands out to you as the most exciting for you?
I think definitely the LED wall is the most exciting change that we've had. I'm looking at it right now, and it literally looks like we blew out our back wall and we have the Rocky Mountains behind us. The technology they have nowadays is amazing. Actually layering images so it actually looks almost three-dimensional, and we've got clouds moving in the background. And the nice thing is, if you've come to the show in the past, we had our mansion, and then we had a Southwest scene, and that was pretty much the only scenes that we could do. But now with this technology, with the screen, we can actually have our audience in the Rocky Mountains. We can have them in the Wild West. We can have them at Southern Plantation, a starry night. And for our finale, we do a tribute to America, and we have an American flag that runs the whole span of that back wall.
So I'm just curious, is what so far, I know it's brand new, but what's the reaction been to it?
Well, we haven't opened the show yet. We're going to open up on March 3rd, but I know the cast and crew here at the Dixie Stampede, we're really excited. We know that we've really upped our game this year, and it's going to be a great addition to the show. And I know new first-time guests as well as repeat guests are really going to be excited about the changes.
So I guess one of the things that everybody would be asking is, okay, it's Dolly Parton, she's lending her name to it, but our understanding is she's really been pretty involved in all of this, hasn't she?
That's correct. Now, she's the creative force in everything that we do, and actually in the finale she wrote her song Color Me America, and that's the song that she actually sings during our finale. And Dolly Parton has a long history of producing excellence, and we want to continue that here with family quality entertainment in the Ozarks.
Do you, this has got to be pretty exciting for her. It takes her a little bit off of her normal beaten path of just doing music tours. Tell us, how's her attitude about everything?
Oh, Dolly Parton's extremely excited about the changes that are made. She knows that these changes are really going to affect the outcome of the show and really bring our show to the next level.
Do you, again, kind of give us our Lewis at Large listeners, if you would, and again, we're talking to Dolly Parton's Branson Dixie Stampede, the world's most fun place to eat, and indeed it is, with a brand new multi-million-dollar makeover that they're unveiling this spring. We're talking to Nathan Lynch. Tell us a little bit about the season and the hours. Tell us about that.
Well, we opened up March 3rd, and we're going to run all the way to the end of this year, so it'll be December 31st. And the great thing about Dixie Stampede is it's a family environment for kids of all ages. I know that it's actually a family tradition during the holiday season. We have numerous shows during Thanksgiving and Christmas, and even throughout the summer months as well. July 4th is usually busy, so we'll do anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 shows a day. The great thing is we can actually add shows. So the best way to find out when we're doing shows will be on our website, and you can also call a reservation number as well.
Okay, I have a question for you. You said you did up to 5 shows a day. Tell us how that relates. If I take a family there to eat to the Dixie Stampede, how does that, like a breakfast show, or tell us how that works?
Well, we have our world-famous 4-course holiday feast, and so we're going to start you out with our creamy vegetable soup. Now, I've got kids, and my kids don't eat vegetables, but they love this creamy vegetable soup. I do sneak it home from time to time for them just so they'll eat their vegetables. And so we're going to start you off with that, and we're going to have a cheesy garlic biscuit as well. And then the main course of our meal is a Cornish hen, a full Cornish hen with a corn on the cob. And then we're also going to give you a piece of pork loin and a half of a potato. And then for dessert, we have an apple turnover, and we have coffee as well. So it's not only a show, but it's also dinner. It's a great value. And even before our show starts, we have a pre-show out in our carriage room where we have a comedian and a juggler out there. So it's just a great family environment, and you're able to have 2 shows and food all for the same price.
Nathan, I'm curious as to, again, because you've got some history there, what, to you see lots of different families sort of come and go. You probably see people come back time and time again, don't you?
We do, yeah. The great thing is it's not only family-friendly, but also we have a lot of reunions that come here. A lot of our veterans come here for their reunions, and it's great. At the end of the show, we do pay homage to our veterans and to this great country that we live in.
What about, again, we know there's a lot of music, but again, explain to our Lewis at Large listeners, again, they're going to hear a lot more than just music and have some great food.
That's right. Now, the first part of our show is more of a musical, so we're going to have our opening. We'll have, we have Into the West. We have wild buffalo that come into our arena. We have 6 buffalo. We have 4 huge steers that come into the arena. We also have trick riding and Roman riding, and it's a fast-paced action show. Now, the second half of the show is all audience participation, as well as our performers on the show. We have a competition between the North and the South. And some of the audience participants, we have kids come down into the arena, and they're chasing chickens. We have a pig race in the show. It's one of our fan favorites. We also have our Ozark Mountain horseshoes that we toss and have competition there. So it's just a great family entertainment where we can have North and South competing and really putting on a great show.
You know, you call it the Dixie Stampede, the world's most fun place to eat. How many people fit in the place?
Well, we can sit over 1,000 people here at this location.
Wow.
And, 2015 actually was our record attendance. So the great thing about Dixie is we're not just sitting back on things we've done in the past. We're actually expanding and moving forward. So it's exciting progress here at Dixie.
You know, there are lots of places in Branson, lots of places in Missouri, lots of places, frankly, in the Midwest for people to spend vacation and entertainment dollars. Why do you think the Stampede has had such a history of success?
Well, it's just a great family value. When you're coming into town and you know the kids are going to be hungry, and you're going to want a show that's going to entertain the kids, and also a show that's going to entertain you as an adult and as a parent, and even grandparents too. So I think that's one of the things that set Dixie Stampede apart is you get the pre-shows, you're getting comedy, you're getting juggling, you're getting your food, which is a fantastic meal, more than you can eat. Most people take a doggy bag home with them. And then our show as well is just a high-quality show. So it's I think that's definitely one of the reasons why it's been so successful here in Branson, as well as Pigeon Forge as other locations.
Why don't you share with us, before we wind down here completely, Nathan, a little bit as Master of Ceremonies. Tell us kind of what your responsibilities are and what are some of the things you do, not only throughout the show, but tell us a little bit about how your week is structured.
Well, we work 7 days a week. We do shows 7 days a week, so we'll have 1 day off a week, so we all rotate in and out. But the great thing about being the host of the show is we get things started off. We get to see the kids' faces, the families' faces while they're watching the show. Our Roman Rite of Fire, we have columns of fire that literally shoot out of our pond, and it's great to see our guests' expressions when that fire comes up and they can actually feel the heat radiating off of that. And one of my favorite parts of the show is the finale, when we bring out the American flag, and all of our riders have an American flag with them. We have 12 riders in the arena, and it's great to just see fellow Americans standing up and putting their hand over heart and saluting the flag.
What again? All these kinds of shows obviously require upgrades from time to time. What the timing on this one? How do you kind of know when it's time to do an upgrade or change things around a little bit?
Well, this is entering into our 22nd season, so this is the biggest update that we've done. And in years past, about 4 years ago, we updated our trick riding scene, and then a couple years ago, we added Roman rides. So we try to make changes throughout the years, and we know that this is, like I said, last year was a very successful year for us, and we want to continue to excel. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do these changes now, so that first-time guests and revisiting guests will have a reason to come.
Well, it sounds pretty exciting. Again, I'm curious, you got visitors? Have you ever kept track on visitors from all around the world, I assume? But what about, say, countries like China and Russia and Australia and some of those?
Yeah, it's amazing. At the end of the shows, we do an autograph session where the horses actually come close to the wall, and we get a chance to kind of talk to our guests and see what they're excited about. And it's amazing to me to see guests all the way from Australia to Russia, like you'd mentioned, and to the Asian countries as well, really come out here and really enjoying the show, too.
Well, Nathan, don't want to take you too far down the road, but where do you see yourself in 5-10 years? What are you going to be doing? You're still going to be there being the master of ceremonies, or are we going to see you on Broadway somewhere?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I'm very glad to be a part of this great show and be a part of Dolly's Dixie Stampede. So I'm not sure where the future holds with that, but I do enjoy what I do, and Branson's a great place to live, and yeah, I don't really know, but I'm very grateful and blessed to be where I'm at right now.
Well, we appreciate your time and sharing us about the update about Dolly Parton, her Branson's Dixie Stampede, the world's most fun place to eat. Hey, Nathan, if you would, for our Lewis at Large listeners in this general area, could you give us either a website or how can they find out more information if they want to make the trip?
Yes, the reservation phone number is 1-800-520-5544. Then, of course, our website is DixieStampede.com.
All right. Well, listen, best of luck. I know you got a lot of talent behind that, a lot of energy, and a lot of resources went into making this thing even better than it was before. And I do appreciate your time with us today.
Well, thanks, Warner. We appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
You bet. We'll be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.